Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm Matt Pamonte, joined by Wyatt Darby for match number 2 of our finals. Grant Wozniak picking up a W in Legacy, and now we're going to play some Pioneer. It's been a while since we played Pioneer today.
Yeah, I don't know if we actually have we played Pioneer
I don't
today?
think so.
Yeah, it was actually the first stage of yesterday,
Yeah.
so it's been a while, and we have 2 of the spicier decks in the format: 5-color Niv Mizzet and Simic Company. So it looks like our players are ready. So why don't we get down to it and see them in action here?
All right, cool. So our first Pioneer match of the day comes in the finals, which is quite hilarious if I had to gather some thoughts.
Yeah, I think Sam has kind of been trying to avoid the format all day. He brought 3 brews to the tournament, and 2 out of 3 performing well. That's not bad.
Yep.
But the Simic Company deck had a real rough time in his first pod, and maybe that one needed a bit of refining. The format changed in a pretty fundamental way with the banning of Oko and Nexus on Monday.
Yeah, so both players going to take a mulligan here. Let's take a peek here at Sam's deck list so you can see the Simic Company deck's all about. So he's got, just a smattering of blue and green creatures, kind of like value stuff. And then, there's one Nissa. The numbers are really strange to me on this one, but, it has some powerful things going on. Tireless Tracker and Ramming Excavator together are good. Obviously, Wayward Swordtooth can be good. There's a lot of weird stuff going on.
Yeah, it's definitely a deck that's trying to achieve a combination of 3 drops. Ramming Excavator, Tireless Tracker, and Wayward Swordtooth in conjunction can absolutely bury your opponent in card advantage.
Yeah.
The Excavator does go crazy with the Fabled Passage and Evolving Wilds, a card that I haven't really seen a ton of in the format, and that's going to be the end game that he's working towards.
Okay, so Grant's deck is ginormous. There's tons of one-ofs. That's kind of the nature of the beast when you're playing 4 Bring to Lights in your deck. So Grant is playing 4 Bring to Lights, as I mentioned there. He's got tons and tons of one-ofs. I'm not going to go through all of them because I will fall asleep at the table. He does notably have 4 Niv Mizzet and 4 Teferi, though, as well as 4 Sylvan Caryatid and a pair of Gilded Geese in order to ramp him into that really devastating sorcery spell.
Yeah, it's definitely a mid-range deck designed to kill mid-range decks. Niv Mizzet is an impossible card to grind through. So I think it's going to actually be able to contend with Sam's Tireless Tracker value, and we'll see how that plays out. And kind of interesting, Sam's deck is a collected company deck, but actually completely lacking in any one-mana acceleration. They don't play very well with the fetch lands, and when you're playing 27 lands in your company deck, you really need to make sure that your hits are impactful. Finding a 1/1 on turn 4, not going to do the job.
Okay. You see both players going to use some of those lands at Fabled Passage and an Evolving Wilds, one on each side here.
Didn't I say something about hoping we could play Pioneer to not have both players shuffling at the same time?
You've doomed us. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, my bad.
All right, so couple of forests out. Is forest the most powerful land in Magic now?
Probably,
yeah. Tough, right?
Every
It's
format
tough.
where Oko is still legal and also standard.
Yeah.
Wait, that's all of them, isn't it?
Yeah, man, it's wild. All right, so couple of forests out of the deck here. Yeah, the shuffling mechanic is quite annoying for me. Let's see what we got here. So Sam going to untap with his forest. Mutavault is the second land. Does he have Thorn Lieutenant? Okay. Thorn Lieutenant's an interesting card here.
Yeah, definitely a card whose job is to be a speed bump against aggressive decks. It's not something that you can lightning strike down particularly easy. Its pressure is mild, but it is some sort of payoff for all the extra accelerating you can do with Wayward Swordtooth. The pump ability makes it a very sizable threat.
Sure. All right, so you see Thorn Lieutenant there. It's a 2/3, which is pretty okay rate for 2 mana. It also has that pump ability for 6, which is good stuff. And breaking on the targeted removal is kind of, I think, what Sam's goal was with this card.
Yeah, absolutely. He kind of realized that, cutting the 1-drops and playing the combination of Thorn Lieutenant and God, what's the other 2/3? Sylvan
Advocate.
Sylvan Advocate. Yeah, really gave his deck the time to kind of set up. And here we see, speaking of setup, Grant with a second accelerant, meaning he is live to cast any of his 5-drop next turn. The mana is kind of perfect here.
All right, Raminap Excavator for Sam. He's going to play a land for turn. He's going to go ahead and use that Evolving Wilds as you see him go through his deck here. So gets. All right, so.
Yeah, Sam getting 2 lands because he's able to play an extra land each turn with the Swordtooth, and the Excavator is allowing that land to be the Evolving Wilds in the graveyard. So even though Sam played Swordtooth and passed last turn, meaning he didn't get the extra land drop, untapping and having the Excavator means that he now has all the land drops he needs for the entirety of the game.
All right, so 5 colors. Here comes Niv Mizzet for Grant. We're going to have lots of cards going onto the battlefield here as he reveals these cards due to Niv Mizzet's ability, and those are some pretty nice hits. All right, you'll see Niv Mizzet has lots of text here. So for all 5 colors, Niv Mizzet is a 6/6 flying dragon avatar. When it enters the battlefield, which it just did, you reveal the top 10 cards of your library. For each color pair, choose a card that's exactly those colors from among them. Put the chosen cards into your hand. Rest on the bottom. So Grant looks like he's taking a Bring to Light, a Teferi, an Abrupt Decay, and I think that was a Knight of Autumn, but I'm not 100% sure on that last one there.
Yeah, it wasn't. For all of the good defensive abilities that SAM creatures have, they actually do lack the ability to interact with flyers.
Yeah.
Even though SAM is starting to set up his engine, Grant actually prioritizing not the sweeper from Niv Mizzet, not Supreme Verdict, but instead taking Teferi. And that makes a lot of sense. He has 2 solid colors, both blue and white, completely tied into the mana dorks. So those cards, you kind of need your accelerants to stick around here.
So Sam going to go ahead and play Tireless Tracker. And going to use that ramming up Excavator ability again. So Sam's deck, for all the trouble he had in the pod play, he's firing on all cylinders here.
Yeah, when I looked at it, I actually suspected it to be pretty strong against, some of the slower control and mid-range strategies just because of this type of value you can generate. And, Grant's deck has been more focused on kind of implementing his own game plan than interacting with Sam.
Yeah.
And the consequence of that is, well, there are all of these 4-drops on the battlefield, all these 3-drops on the battlefield, and none of them have been touched.
Yeah. So Sam is got a lot of stuff, but Bring to Light, being able to just go get whatever Grant wants, is going to be pretty punishing on this board.
Yeah, I think some of the most appealing options here, Bring to Light, fetching Supreme Verdict is still an option. That's part of the reason why Grant was willing to send that away on, decline it on the Niv Mizzet's Enter the Battlefield ability. Let's see.
He's got a Deafening Clarion also, which notably kills, I believe, almost everything on Sam's battlefield. The only thing it doesn't kill the Niv Mizzet, which is quite impressive. Sam looked like he was going to play a Fae of Wishes there. Choosing not to.
Yeah, and access to Brazen Borrower here as well from Sam. So if he wants to push Niv Mizzet out of the way, it's going to give Grant a lot of value, but the beatdowns are real. The City's Blessing means that Sword Tooth can attack.
Yeah.
And Sam is sitting on, what is that, 8, 9, 12 power just this turn if he wanted to, but actually decided to take a more defensive posture here.
Yeah, he's got quite a bit going on here. Grant does have, I think he just picked up a Drown in the Lock, which isn't the best here, but he does have that Abrupt Decay. He's got a lot of stuff going on here.
Yeah, Drown in the Lock, not fantastic against Sam's mostly creature deck. He doesn't do a ton of putting extra things into his graveyard. The one thing being the fetch lands, but with the Excavator, you just need the one fetch land. You don't have to actually play any more out from your hand at any point in the game.
Yeah. All right, so Grant going to go ahead and Abrupt Decay down, Raminap Excavator, and he's passing the turn back, it looks like here. Okay. So I'm going to take the time to draw off of a clue with this. Wow, and actually Grant has Culligan's Command to shock that Tireless Tracker with the counter on the stack. I think he's making Sam discard a card here. Probably trying to turn that Drown in the Lock on, it looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Sam has been... He missed a land drop the turn he played Sword Tooth, so that's going to signal to Grant that there's a good chance that hand is still full of all action.
Yeah.
And you want to make sure that the timing of the Culligan's commands make sure the Tireless Tracker dies. Pretty smart timing there. And, it's kind of important to break up the engine. The problem is it already produced 4 clues.
Right.
So Sam has kind of already done everything he's needed to do.
Yeah. Sam finds a Mutable on top of the deck, and he's going to play Tireless Tracker first. Sam is setting himself up to get Supreme Verdict pretty nicely here. And there's tons and tons of clues coming for Sam. He's got a lot of cards. I'm trying to think if... it's just going to be so devastating, that Supreme Verdict, no matter what you do. But he does have, virtual 5 extra cards sitting on the battlefield here with those clues. All right, you can pass back to Grant.
Yeah, Grant's Niv Mizzet did generate 4 cards worth of value, but the thing is, his value isn't coming with extra mana
Right.
sources. Sam's card advantage and acceleration kind of goes hand in hand here, and this game has actually been pretty good, in terms of a display of what Wayward Swordtooth can do. Really kind of subtly powering up every other piece of this synergy pile.
All right. Sam reveals another Brazen Borrower here. All right, so another clue being drawn by Sam. Nissa. Yeah, there's so much stuff going on for Sam. Reveal Forest on top from that Courser Kruvix.
Yeah, the clue's doing a great job of allowing Sam to draw through spells on top of his deck
Yeah.
and make sure he can hit value off of the Courser of Krufix here. So with the Nissa showing up as well, which Nissa, Who Shakes the World, actually a one of in Sam's deck, but a really excellent way to further boost the mana, make sure cracking all the clues is trivial. And also, it's another resilient threat, doesn't exactly get cleaned up by a sweeper, although Niv Mizzet is a real problem, because it has the ability to attack down Nissa immediately.
So Sam going to go for that Nissa. And then Grant going to Abrupt Decay down the Tireless Tracker, it looks like. All right.
That's actually providing the 5th card in the graveyard to turn on Drown in the Lock.
Wow.
So, yeah, pretty excellent sequence. Sam doesn't get the land off the top of the library, so he misses a little bit of value there. And, yeah, pretty great comeback from Grant, especially because of these spells, they're so efficient. So even though he is missing land drops, being able to play multiple spells in a turn is allowing this game to at least stay close to parity. Although, is this the 3rd Tireless Tracker? Just keeps the value coming.
Yep. It's pretty good looking for Grant here, honestly. I mean, all things considered. Sam's deck has done tons of things, and Sam's just left with 2 Brazen Borrowers at this point, though. And it looks like Grant might have picked up a new land here. He looks like a mountain, though. No or blue or white sources other than that Sylvan Caryatid here. It's an interesting game.
Yeah, it's a shame that Bring to Light isn't capable of fetching like a planar cleansing
Yeah.
type effect, because that's really what Grant would need to bring the game to relative parity. Although there are 2 Mutavaults sitting on the battlefield too, so Sam's kind of got a lot of his angles checked. Grant can't do any kind of counter racing with Niv Mizzet because Courser of Krufix is just providing way too much life to make that viable. And once Niv Mizzet attacks, well, the floodgates are open for Sam to crack back with his, close to over 10 power on the battlefield here.
Right. Let's see what Grant ends up doing here. He's got tons of cards still. So he's going to go with Knight of Autumn, it looks like here. Going to blow up a clue. All right.
Not particularly high impact,
Yeah.
I would say.
Not the best. All right, so back to Sam we go. There's a Nykthos. That one is generating mana now at this point. Got up to 5 devotion pips here. A Fabled Passage there. Sam has so many cards. Oh, man. All right, well. There's...
Oh, kind of something that has been forgotten a little bit because the card hasn't seen much play lately, but Courser of Krufix actually being an eligible target for that Knight of Autumn disenchant upon entering the battlefield. So Grant may be overlooking that one. Definitely not the traditional way enchantments sit on the battlefield, wrapped up in a creature as well. But that's going to be a pretty big misstep as we see, Sam immediately play those 2 lands off the top of his deck.
Yeah, I think I remember there was, in the standard format, there was I believe it was Golgari. It was like an Enchantress deck. It had Courser Krufix, Doomwake Giant was in that deck. There was tons of cool stuff like that going on.
Yeah, really, really strong constellation strategy. I remember Whip of Erebos and Hornet Queen, being pretty prominently featured there. That deck was sweet.
That was definitely a good one. Let's see, Sam gonna draw some more cards with his clues. I mean, for all that Sam's doing, Grant just has a Supreme Verdict in the bin, or in the chamber, just hanging out and waiting. So He's not really under too much duress, to be honest. Let's so see. I'm gonna float 2 more green. Looks like Sylvan Advocate. All right. Gonna go ahead and use Fabled Passage here. Find another land. Yeah, Sam's deck is quite thin at the moment.
Yeah, he could just be setting up a situation where he can have a double bounce with Brazen Borrower and just end the game in one attack.
Yeah.
And one thing that is a little bit worrisome is, I don't know, at what point does he say, like, if I get swept here, I won't have enough threats in my deck to win the game?
Yeah.
I mean, I think we're kind of far from that now, as there are a few Mutavaults and Brazen Borrowers left in Sam's hand. But,
Yeah.
I mean, Sweeper plus other interactions, say, reloading off a Niv Mizzet from Grant, means that he has the ability to interact, with a lot of creatures many times over.
7, 8 green pips here. So, I'm going to have 6 green floating. Draw a card. All right, reveal another another forest. Down to 4 green floating for Sam.
Kind of funny how we just came from Sam playing Cradle in Legacy, and Nykthos actually doing a pretty fair approximation of it in this game.
Yeah, going to draw a Mutavault here. Down to 2 green. And Sam back to almost a full grip here.
And also somehow hasn't found Collected Company at any point. Yeah, here's the namesake card finally showing up, and really incredibly powerfully with so many 3-drops. You really maximize the mana that you're getting out of the creatures, and being able to put together kind of 2/3 of this value puzzle with one card is really, I think, a key for the consistency of the deck.
Yeah, I guess my big question is how many threats are still available for the Collected Company to hit at this point. He's through several of his Sylvan Advocates now, and Coursers, and the Tireless Trackers, so he's through a lot of cards here. Graham might be pressed to use that Wrath effect here soon. Looks like he's going to go with, is that Tension Sphere?
Yeah, also Teferi, Time Raveler is an option. And that's going to help kind of minimize the impact of Brazen Borrower, or at least if they're going to bounce his creatures, he'll have a little bit potentially more interaction as a response. It'll be a bit more telegraphed. One thing I think Sam might be trying to set up is he does have 2 copies of Fey of Wishes in his deck.
Okay.
So if he can build his battlefield wide enough and then tutor for Part the Water Veil to end the game in 2 consecutive combat steps and kind of avoid a Wrath blowing it up, in between.
Okay. Sam untapping here. Gonna play, there's another Fabled Passage. Nice, good value.
And Sam checking how many basics he has left in his deck. I think there are 11 total, and we see
7, I think now. 8 total right now. And Sam has used, Sam's used 8, and there's 11. You're right. So I think he's got 8 of those basics. There's Fabled Passage with Tireless Tracker. Another Fabled Passage. All right. Value. Another Tireless Tracker. All right. So Sam's starting to churn through his deck rather quickly here. And I think Grant has, I think he has a Deafening Clarion in his hand, so he could instant speed that if he wanted. It's not going to kill Sylvan Advocate, which is pretty notable.
Yeah, and at this point, I think we should point out those Mutavaults they're currently 4/4s. Company with 3 Advocates left in deck, which Sam is actually becoming very likely to hit with how small this is representing almost like a mid-combat overrun for his creatures, which is kind of wild. And Grant's the Clarion, it wasn't castable for the longest time because so much of his mana was tied up in Gilded Goose and Caryatid, and now it almost feels like that window is kind of closed completely. Yeah,
you see Sylvan Advocate here. It was referred to as Tarmogoyf kind of when it was in Standard a while back here. So for 2 mana, it's a 2/3 Vigilance. As long as you control 6 or more lands, which Sam has probably about triple that at this point, Sylvan Advocate gets +2/+2, and so do the land creatures you control. So not a bad one. Sam has so many cards. They're all over. Yeah, it's difficult because Sam, I think, wants to deploy a few more things about it to be able to alpha Grant down, but at the same time, he knows about that Bring to Light, I believe. So Kind of scary stuff. Although Grant only does have the one Supreme Verdict in his deck, so once you get through that, it's a little bit even more manageable.
Yeah, absolutely. He can see that the possibility of Deafening Clarion might exist, but he does have a lot of threats that are capable of slogging through it.
Yep.
We talked about the Advocates, but Wayward Swordtooth at this point is just a 5/5 that's capable of attacking for pretty huge chunks of damage.
Okay. Yeah, Grant's got lots of stuff going on. So, see what Sam decides on.
Oh, and actually, 2 Advocates in hand means that, yeah, we're going to be probably looking at Sam deciding if he's capable of just ending the game this turn with the 6/6 Mutavaults and probably a double, maybe even triple Brazen Borrower bounce. I lost
Yeah.
track of how many of those he has been holding on to as well.
I think there's a pair here. Wow. All right, so let's see what Sam comes up with. Looks like he might be going for those plays you mentioned. Could be going for Collected Company here.
Yeah, Collected Company as a tool to find the Fae of Wishes makes sense, but instead, just slamming 2 copies of Sylvan Advocate to
Yeah.
increase his devotion count for the upcoming Nykthos activation. I think putting himself up to 10.
Yeah, looks like 10, partner. There's 10. He's going to... Let's see. This is... Down to 9. He's got Brazen Borrower to bounce that Niv Mizzet. This could end really poorly for Sam here.
Yeah, if Sam isn't capable of ending the game this combat step, I could see it going that way, but it just seems like there is just so much going on for him here. With at least one more Brazen Borrower, being able to take out the Knight of Autumn or Gilded Goose, I don't exactly know how Grant would be able to live, and
Yeah.
it's possible he doesn't even need to play the other one. He still might have lethal being presented.
Yeah, since Grant didn't plus that Teferi, he's unable to use that Bring to Light at instant speed, so Sam looks like he's going to load up everything. Okay. All right. So these are all coming. There's tons of damage coming through here.
Yeah, so Grant is capable here of blocking the 2 Mutavaults. That's going to allow Sam to... Let's see. Did he use the rest of the mana from the Nykthos on pumping Thorn Lieutenant?
Yeah, he may have. Okay. He's going to draw with the... excuse me, going to gain 3 life. I'm not sure what... That's it's got to be more than 8. Got to be more than 21 damage here. I mean, maybe it's not.
Yeah, with I think both copies of Mutavault getting blocked, it's 4 from the Advocate, 9, 11, was that 17 by my count?
Yeah.
Yep, so Grant does fall down to 1 and then up to 4 after consuming a clue, but even a Supreme Verdict at this point isn't capable of living through the double Mutavault attack here on the follow-up, plus the unreal number of cards that Sand is capable of sandbagging.
Well, he does have a clue. I suppose that's a way to get, or excuse me, a food. Was going to put him up to 4. Yeah, he's just dead. So that was quite the game. There was a lot of permanence. My friend Bob refers to it as permanent soup, is what he calls that. So
Yeah, I think Sam kind of assembled the stew on turn 4 and just chilled, let it simmer for about 10 turns, and Grant was pretty happy to oblige, just not really capable of playing anything to break it up.
Yeah.
The interaction just didn't come early or often to stop this energy before Sam had, kind of doubled him in lands.
Yeah. All right, so for Sam, he gets a W in the first game here. So let's think about Grant's deck, his 5-color Niv Mizzet deck. I'm trying to see if it's going to get better for him post-board. So he does have Knight of Autumn. He has Tolsimir, Friend to Wolves, which is a nice one. Ashiok, Dream Render, 2 Dovin's Veto, 2 Thought Erasure, an Anger of the Gods, an Unmoored Ego, another Supreme Verdict, a Spring to Mind, Cindervines, and then 3 Damping Sphere. What do you like here?
Just give me ways to break up the creature combo. I think the best cards for that are Thought Erasure and Supreme Verdict. Erasure being particularly powerful because it's one of the ways to have a clean one-for-one exchange with Collected Company.
Okay.
Also, if your opponent's heavy on, let's say they have a lot of Wayward Swordtooth, but no tireless or only one tireless tracker to pay off all those extra land drops, you can really kind of pick that apart. And it's really just, Grant has a lot of kind of clunky card advantage. So I really like the spells that are slower, a little bit or a little bit more efficient, and lower on the curve.
Okay, you think like Anger of the Gods is going to come in as well, or is that just not hit enough stuff?
Anger seems reasonable. Being able to take care of early advocates, small tireless trackers, and excavator seems decent, but it does have the risk of kind of bricking the other part
Sure.
of Sam's deck. So it is only one copy, so the risk isn't particularly high.
Yeah.
But that being said, maybe he's just content with the Deafening Clarion that he already has access to main deck.
Okay, let's jump to Sam's sideboard, and his is going to look a little bit different. He does have that 2 Fae of Wishes in the main deck, so his board is kind of a wish board here, but he does have 2 Scavenging Ooze, 2 Statesian Tactics, 3 Mystical Disputes, and then a bunch of one-ofs here in Lovestruck Beast, Reclamation Sage, Vivian, Champion of the Wilds, Nissa, Who Shakes the World, Disdainful Stroke, Negate, Return to Nature, and Part the Water Veil. There's some things here that are good. I mean, obviously the Disdainful Stroke sticks out in my mind. What else do you like here?
I kind of like the Mystical Disputes.
Okay.
One of the downsides of Niv Mizzet is it's vulnerable to all the color hate.
Yeah.
So being able to tag Niv Mizzet and Bring to Light with a 1-mana counter spell is excellent. It allows Sam to mostly deploy his game plan on the same time frame he would normally. Holding up 1 mana tends to be, not particularly difficult. And I think it's going to leave a lot of the other cards in his sideboard. Just having access to the functional extra copies with Fae of Wishes, I think will lead Sam to keep his deck pretty similar to what we saw in Game 1.
Okay. Cool. Well, Sam's going to be on the draw for this one. I mean, Grant's deck I thought was operating pretty well. He had an early Niv Mizzet. So he had the early Niv Mizzet. He had a sweeper. He drew tons of cards off of Niv Mizzet. And I thought, maybe there's a way he's going to get back in this. But Sam navigated it pretty well, and Grant was never able to wrath him away and then also deal with the Mutavaults and things like that. So
yeah, it's just, I think the story of that game was kind of Grant's choke on mana. Never really getting past 4 for the longest time, and never really being able to pull the trigger on the Supreme Verdict, because that means he would lose the Niv Mizzet and the mana creatures. He was just a bit too invested in the board to pull that, and that's kind of why you only see, not really a big commitment to Supreme Verdict. It's just the one copy. The Bring to Light utility is excellent, but if you have to lean into the control role that way, it's not always going to be a great, 1-for-5 exchange like it is in blue-white control.
Sure.
So maybe he needed to pull the trigger and just give up the battlefield, hope the mana would come together later. But once you let Sam sit with those 4 3-mana creatures in play for 2 or 3 turns, you're just never going to catch up.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. So Grant going to try and even the score here and take us to a third game when in Pioneering again. No Pioneer all day until right now. It's kind of shocking, It's like the new hot format. Although there was the ban shakeup, so players maybe are a little bit untested or less tested on their deck's choice. Sam said, if there wasn't a ban, I probably would have played the boring Simic ramp deck, Simic flash deck, and then just kind of played that. So definitely choices.
I remember in the event chat, I saw a few people, a few players having some posts, with the hashtag 12Oko. So, on Monday, that was changed to hashtag 8Oko. Yeah, so that really did, it shook the format up a lot. I think players, the comfort level was low, and it just seemed like we thought this was going to happen. So a lot of the prep time was dedicated to the older formats. And I think the older formats, there's just been more time for people to be specialists and a little bit more, there's more of a known metagame to kind of attack and fight against.
Yeah, that makes sense. And again, Pioneer's relatively, still relatively new. There's a lot of new decks coming out. I mean, Sam's deck is definitely something we haven't seen before. This 5-color Niv Mizzet deck is something we've seen, but there's a lot of different flexibility things with Bring to Light. You kind of got to make sure your bullets are the right bullets. And in a quote unknown format, it's hard to know what you need.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of why Grant has he casts a wide net with these. I think you could kind of categorize the bullets into, high impact threat, efficient removal, kind of flexible card that I can play a couple copies of, and I don't mind if I draw an Abrupt Decay. I could typically use it. One thing that I actually really like in this deck, we saw Grant actually steal a match against Lotus Field combo with Drown in the Lock.
Yeah.
I looked at this deck and said, I can't really imagine how you beat that combo deck that is all about lands, but he drew double Drown and his 1 Thought Erasure and just
Wow.
completely picked his opponent apart. So that's the upside of having such, a smattering of cards, is that, you always give yourself the opportunity to draw the wrong ones and the right ones
Yeah,
sometimes.
definitely.
So yeah, Grant did kind of actually have a pretty quick win in his pod. And that being said, he didn't play against Simic Company. So one of the few decks that might be better equipped to play the outdraw like just
Yeah.
bury you in card advantage game. And it's hard to do that through a Niv.
Yeah, Sam's definitely got a lot of ways to keep up on cards with Ramming Up Excavator. We saw, I mean, we just saw it run away with all the combo, basically, with Corsair Crewfix, Excavator, Tireless Tracker, and Wayward Swordtooth all in unison, just kind of doing its own little thing. Just, Sam was happy to play Solitaire for a few turns until, he ended up killing Grant several turns later.
Yeah, I remember when I heard what the deck list was, I was like, oh man, I must have missed some utility land in Pioneer. Like there's not Ghost Quarter, is there? But yeah, it turns out Fabled Passage and Evolving Wilds is enough.
Just good enough. All right, so these guys going to kick off game number 2 as Grant starts us off. And let's see what we got for Grant. All right, just passing here on second turn.
Yeah, no Sylvan Caryatid or Gilded Goose is a bit of a surprise. In terms of what hands you would keep that don't have those turn 2 plays, nor the Thought Erasures that we talked about, I think Grant's got to be sitting on a lot of interaction. The Abrupt Decays, Drown of the Lock, not particularly good right now, but
Yeah.
against Sam's 8 fetch land deck, it is capable of snagging the 2s and 3s in a relevant time frame. And yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see Sam's first threat bite the dust here.
Yeah, Teferi's a card I would assume is going to hang out there if Sam leads on a Sylvan Advocate here, which he does, and Grant has Teferi. That's a pretty good start. Looks like that's what's going to happen. So Grant going to go ahead and bounce that Sylvan Advocate, draw a new card, and pass back to Sam.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, Sam's deck is constructed entirely of cards that play poorly against Teferi.
Yeah.
3-mana creatures that don't necessarily generate value immediately, or at least when you play them on turn 3. So Teferi is definitely providing a big tempo boost early, and this is kind of it's different than what we saw last game. Grant is going to be kind of a step ahead in development, both because of he was on the play, and Teferi plays a big part there too.
Yeah, so you see there's an Assassin's Trophy. And Sam should get a land here, right?
Yeah, this is how you cut the value of Excavator Evolving Wilds. You just remove a land from Sam's deck preemptively. Like, wait, that doesn't make sense. But you know what I mean.
So Grant going to go ahead and Assassin's Trophy down that Tireless Tracker, and Sam going to get a Forest out.
Yeah, and, giving Sam that extra land, pretty big deal. His deck is not particularly efficient, again, with any of his threats. If he has counter spells, being able to play a 4-drop or a 3-drop, have a counter spell up, and play a tap land is a really nice sequence to be opened up. And it also is going to allow Tireless Tracker plus Clue Cracking here too. So yeah, just really clean and really shows off the punishment of casting Assassin's Trophy before, say, turns like 6 or 7.
Yeah. So Sam with the Fabled Passage going to go look for another land here. All right. So another island there. So Sam up to 2 clues. Grant going to keep that Fabled Passage in play. Finds another one. All right, so Fabled Passage is going to get cracked for Grant. This is the one fetch land other than Evolving Wilds, I suppose, that's illegal in this format. So you can see from Throne of Eldraine, there's a land, Fabled Passage, a land here. You tap it, sacrifice it, search your library for a basic land card, put it into battlefield tapped, search your library. Then, if you control 4 or more lands, you get to untap it. So if it's your 4th land drop for the turn, it gets to come in untapped, which is pretty nice. It really doesn't feel like a hindrance at all in my experience playing this card.
Yeah, really what it does is kind of occupies, it's like a turn 1 play a lot of the time. So, in a deck that doesn't have access to too much of that, Grant gets to kind of ignore that downside and get access to all the flexibility that's going to happen when he needs to cast his powerful cards on time, which is around turn 4 or 5. So here we actually do see Niv Mizzet. We'll find out exactly how many cards it yields. I would expect, less than 4 would be kind of a disappointment from Grant's side.
Yeah, it looks like a ton here. There's 8. I think this is 6 cards. 1, 2, 3, 4. I think there's 6 cards available for Grant here.
Yeah, has to make a choice on which blue-white card he wants, whether that's a backup to Fairy or Supreme Verdict. But right now on this battlefield, Niv Mizzet looks a bit better than the rest. And one interesting point about Spring to Mind, I believe that one's actually a legal choice for your Simic card.
Yeah. All right, so Grant is going to take Looks like he's in between on that. All right, so going to go ahead and pick up 5 fresh ones here. So you can see Spring to Mind there. For 3 mana, the sorcery is search your library for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield, tap, then shuffle your library. Just a way for him to fix his mana. And then Mind for 6. Aftermath is draw 2 cards, which I don't think gets cast that often, but you never know.
Yeah, it's excellent because ramping to 5 on turn 4 is kind of the name of the game. And, it's the fact that it kind of the acceleration feeds into the card draw is pretty nice. So it's something that you don't really ever want to have to do, but having a bit of an safety valve for flood it's a nice part of a ramp spell that's a bit overcosted, but solidly flexible.
I think Grant has 8 cards, so he's going to go ahead and discard that Spring to Mind. So those 4, there's a Clarion Drown, Culligan's Command, and a Teferi. I think he's going to leave him face up for Sam, it looks like. Sam does have... I think he might... No, he doesn't have the ability to get through it yet. I was wondering if he'd be able to attack through the Nib and at least trade with it here. So he's getting a clue from Fabled Passage, and then he's going to sacrifice it and get another clue.
Yeah, it could definitely offer up the trade, but critically that's going to demand 4 of his mana this turn, which robs him of any ability to really play an impactful follow-up threat, post and Mizzet trade.
Yeah, so he's going to Fae of Wishes to bounce it. Brazen Borrower to bounce it. Going to go ahead and take down Teferi. Yeah, Sam knows about this Deafening Clarion now, so I'd be surprised if he's going to commit more to the board.
Yeah, unless, of course, they live through Deafening Clarion. Yeah. So the Tireless Tracker is representing 4 toughness with a clue on the battlefield. And actually killing Teferi unlocks Disdainful Stroke. So if Grant goes in for 1 powerful spell in a turn, it's just going to end up backfiring horribly.
Yep. All right, so Grant takes a draw step here. He has Bring to Light in hand also, and I'd be surprised if he doesn't try and fire it off.
Yeah, it's, I could see having a 2-spell turn of something like, lead with Teferi, kind of fish out counter magic, and then maybe fire a spot removal spell. Sure. We do see the Drown of the Lot capable of taking out either creature. But that's going to depend on how much Grant respects those counter spells post-board. If he thinks Sam only has them there, only maybe has 2 of them to board in and the rest are going to be wish targets, he might kind of play into them a bit more aggressively.
Yeah. So Grant looks like he's going to go with your line and play that Teferi. Going to bounce Sylvan Advocate. This is a pretty good line here from Grant. He gets to protect his Bring to Light from a counterspell next turn if that's what he wants to do. So draw a new card. I'm going to go ahead and drown that Tireless Tracker now. All right, and he's left with Culligan's Command and Deafening Clarion in hand, as well as several other cards. He has that Bring to Light among many. I think he has a back up to 7 cards for him. So I'm going to draw off one of his clues here. Looks like Mystical Dispute might have been the pickup. All right. Yeah, Sam has quite a bit of counter magic in hand here. Not particularly good against the Time Raveler.
Yeah, being able to interact with the first Teferi was excellent, but part of the downside of being Simic is there's no questing beasts in Sam's deck, so his ability to take out planeswalkers is kind of crimped. And this is actually exactly the kind of board that I'd be interested in casting Supreme Verdict onto. Sam actually did the work of removing your Niv Mizzet temporarily for you, so that there's just no downside. And I strongly suspect Bring the Light is still capable of finding that sweeper, as soon as Grant next turn as Grant needs it. Although Teferi means it's no rush. He could wait until whenever his planeswalker's under duress.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. So Sam going to lead on. Looks like Tireless Tracker number 3. Tireless Tracker number 3 hits the battlefield, and a land, or generates another clue. Next for Sam here. So I'm going to redeploy that Sylvan Advocate as well. All right. And then, really interesting turn here for Sam. I think Sam's actually in a lot more trouble this game than he was previously. We know that he did Brazen Borrower the Niv Mizzet to Grant's hand, so Grant's able to refuel at any time, but not in any rush, as you mentioned here.
Yeah, and Sam kind of making that play under the assumption that Disdainful Stroke would be able to tag Niv on the way down, and the second Teferi really making that awkward.
Yeah.
He's making sure to present his threats in a very metered pace, not walking into a verdict too much. But still, Grant has the capability of firing off the verdict if he wants to. But 2 creatures at a time, that's something you could pick apart with spot removal, which the 5-color Nimbus deck is pretty awash in.
All right, looks like is Grant moving to discard here? How many cards? He's back up to 7, I think. Okay. Wow, discarding. I think that's a Bring to Light that he discarded. Can't tell. It's a little bit off the screen, but that is pretty hefty if he did. So Sam going to generate another clue. All right, there's a Bring to Light there for Grant. This is probably going to be a supreme verdict here if I had to guess. Again, that Sylvan Advocate's rather large now, so both of Sam's creatures going to hit the bin.
Yeah, and not exactly hurting for cards as Grant, but I feel like Sam is almost always going to start his turn with an attack at Teferi. So
Yeah.
it's possible you could save whatever card you're going to choose to discard and just, fire off that Bring to Light right now. His deck isn't necessarily full of counter spells as Grant, so if his turn's always going to end up in a Supreme Verdict, Sam's never going to have another creature he would play first. Maybe just save the 1 extra card there.
Okay, here's a Fae of Wishes. It's going to use that granted ability there. So for the Sorcery on Adventure, you may choose a non-creature card you own from outside the game, reveal it, and put it into your hand. So Sam going through his deck right now. We'll see what he gets. All right. He's looking. Looks like Setesian Tactics is at the front.
A kind of interesting throwback removal spell from kind of the Green Devotion days, but it looks like Part the Water Veil was his choice, and I think he might have been weighing that against some of the Planeswalkers he had in his sideboard. Do I want a little bit more, like an extra turn to use all my mana cracking clues and refilling my battlefield, or maybe doing the Planeswalker thing. But yeah, Part does seem quite strong, and a really unique effect to have access to with the tutoring, and obviously Nexus of Fate is gone, so you have to kind of turn to a bit of a different one, and one nice little bit of synergy. Awaken from Part the Waterville synergizes very nicely with Sylvan Advocate.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so you see that Fae Wishes get put onto the battlefield as well as Sylvan Advocate. So Grant going to untap here. He's got tons of cards. He has to figure out a way to beat this Part the Waterville. Alright, so you see Part the Waterville here for 6 mana. You get to take an extra turn after this one, and then you exile it. But for 9 mana, you get to do that Awaken you mentioned there. For the Awaken is 6. So how Awaken works is if you cast a spell for the Awaken cost, you also put 6 +1/+1 counters on target land you control. It becomes a 0/0 elemental creature with haste. So the Awaken 6 is the 6 additional that you have to put into it, and yeah, that's pretty chunky, that land, especially with Sylvan Advocate, as you mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Grant is, let's see, he has access to maybe one more copy of Supreme Verdict in his deck if he decided to sideboard in that other copy. And we'll see if he decides if this battlefield is enough to pull the trigger on a Bring to Light. But unfortunately, the Fae of Wishes is capable of returning itself to hand and giving Sam another crack at wishing. So it's possible that this might actually be the ambush. Let's see, what would he get? You can't play a creature off of Bring to Light, even if it's on your opponent's turn, because Teferi doesn't give those flash. So we can't do like an ambush Niv Mizzet, as cool as that would be. So it's probably going to be just, maybe the best spot removal that Grant's able to find here.
So he's going for that Bring to Light again here. Huh. I wonder. I'm looking through to see if there's... Verdict's the obvious one to go snag. There's... I don't know.
I guess that actually might be what the pause is. The wording on Bring to Light could potentially... Does it say you may search for a creature, instant, or sorcery and cast it?
Let's bring it up
So,
here.
not really a card that was designed to be played at
I
instant
think
speed.
It's cast because I believe... Like with Thalia, you have to pay the additional, like with Bring to Light. Like you pay additional for Bring to Light, and you pay additional for the card that you're casting. I believe I've seen that before. So we'll get Bring to Light up on the screen here for you in just a second. Yeah, you can see search your library for a creature, instant, or sorcery card with converted mana cost less than or equal to, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, let's see. You may cast that card without paying its cost. Yep. So.
All right, well, Ambush Niv back on the menu?
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty cool.
That is certainly a sweet one. So there's the Niv. This is awesome. Yeah.
You know, we should have had like a bingo card for things to see in this tournament.
This would never have made it. This would never have made the card, ever. Oh, man, this is pretty good.
Yeah, but it gives us a good benchmark of ridiculousness to shoot for, right?
Yep. All right, let's see. So here's, wow, that's a good, those are some good hits there for Grant. Looks like he's going to miss several, though. Yeah, he's just got 3 choices there. And he actually only has two choices, excuse me. So he's going to get the Abrupt Decay, and then I think he has to pick between Drown and Hostage Taker, it looks like. So not the best Niv Mizzet for Grant.
Yeah, it looks like he's going for the efficient, 2-mana interactive spells. And at this point, even a mild Nimbus, it's okay. It's going to preserve his Teferi, battlefield presence and kind of force Sam to continue committing. And, Grant just has the next, so many more of the next threats covered here with those extra interactive spells.
All right, so those go to the bottom there. I think Grant's pretty happy with putting a bunch of lands at the bottom of his deck. You see Courser Crew Fix there for Sam. Again, he's just starting to churn through the deck, though.
Yeah, and this is kind of, I think, what Grant has to aim for is breaking up these creature combos. Yep. We can see the Courser by itself, not particularly interesting. Adding a Wayward Sword Tooth to the equation right now isn't really going to bolster that by a ton. And Sam's trying to get some extra value from the Courser, cracking clues, again, resetting the top of the library.
Yeah. Here is a Forest for Sam. Going to go back up to 21, thanks to that Courser Crew Fix. Another Brazen Borrower. Is Sam on 2? No, he's on a full 4. Okay. That card's really good, by the way, Brazen Borrower.
Yeah, it's, just a reasonable body and having the flexibility of bouncing anything is, kind of letting Sam off the hook for not really playing any other interaction in his main deck. Just, card's incredible.
All right, well. If Sam does anything else. The awkward part is 2 of those cards in his hand, one's a Mystical Dispute and one's a Disdainful Stroke. Just not doing anything against Teferi.
Yeah, and I think he's kind of weighing his options of, how much can I play here? He knows that he has to slog through the Abrupt Decay and the Drown.
Yeah.
And he also knows that, it's tough because tapping out for another creature means that Fae of Wishes isn't capable of being returned to hand, and that's something that he really might want access to.
Right. All right, so. Grant just naturally drew that Supreme Verdict there. Yeah, I feel like Grant has the tools to win this game. An attack here makes me feel like the Supreme Verdict may actually happen.
It's definitely a show of strength, and I think that Grant has more than enough resources to give up this particular Niv Mizzet. It certainly bought back the value that he needed, and I think from Grant's side, he's just pretty happy to kind of ride the value. Now, one thing that is worth pointing out, the natural Supreme Verdict from hand does require 2 white, which looks like, despite having all the colors, Grant actually not doubling up on that white mana.
All right. Is that a Woodland Cemetery, the first land there? I'm not sure which one that is. Okay, the bottom there. Okay. So, actually letting Sam... Is he letting Sam untap here?
Yeah, I think he's going to have some temptation to fire off, spot removal now just to avoid going to discard. And I do think that Courser of Crufix, it's a pretty appealing target to fire off on, as is Fae of Wishes, because we know that we don't know exactly how Sam's sideboarded, but a card like, I guess, is Grant even that badly positioned against a Nissa or a Vivian here?
I don't think so. And wow, Grant just going to let Teferi go. I know he has a backup in hand. But letting it go unlocks these counter spells, these multiple counter spells that Sam has, which is pretty interesting. Wow. And Grant lets it go. I think he has Culligan's Command in hand as well.
Right, which isn't exactly the amount of damage that you need to kill a lot of the important creatures in Sam's deck, especially here we see Ramen Excavator, a 2/3, again dodging.
Yeah. Grant going to attempt to drown the Raminative Excavator in the lock here. Let's see if Sam wants to fight back here. Be surprised. Yeah, so he goes and lets that one go. Man. It's an interesting game. See, I'm going to draw one of those cards from the clues. He has another Courser Crufix, Westville Abbey. Yeah, that one is a problem for Grant. That one is a serious problem for Grant.
Yeah, a threat that can be made at instant speed, even in the face of Teferi, does a lot to enable the Abbey to kind of dodge that really unfortunate bounce that's happened once or twice in my time playing Pioneers. Grant needs to take a look. Not really a card that's seen a ton of play since that, Shadows over it in Shroud Standard.
Yeah, so you see there, it taps for a colorless mana. You can pay 5 and tap Westville Abbey. You pay a life, put a 1/1 white and black creature, or human cleric token onto the battlefield. You can pay 5 and tap it to sack 5 creatures and transform it into, I believe it's Ormondal. Yeah, Profane Prince here. It's a 9/7 flying lifelink, indestructible, and haste. All the keywords. Really great card. So, Grant going to shoot this Culligan's Command at that Brazen Bar. Looks like he's going to deal 2 and make Sam discard a card, which he will discard that Courser Crufix he knew about. And, I mean, Sam knew about all these cards, I believe, that Grant had, so he knew all this here.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's kind of hard for him to use his counter spells all that effectively on any of these just because, they're kind of low impact spot removal spells. Sam has a lot more action behind it, and it looks like we're going to try and set up a sequence where Nimizit gets bounced and then countered on the way down, and that one is substantially more difficult to navigate around that Mystical Dispute.
Yeah, and he has Dispute and Disdainful Stroke, which is pretty nice for Sam. Although he's going to be starting to run low on answers here. Part the Waterveil is still in hand as well. Grant knows about that one. Let's see what Grant decides to go for here. Looks like 3 minutes. Like another Teferi is the play, and that one's gonna stick.
Yeah, third verse kind of same as the first here. Yeah. Teferi kind of starting the proceedings, and Sam's counterspell is just not really doing very much. I could potentially see Sam using the Dispute just to stop Grant having the Nimizit as an uncounterable follow-up. Okay. And actually letting Teferi go. And if that Nimizit gets cast, that's going to be pretty heavily punished by the second counterspell and the Disdainful Stroke.
Yeah, I'm shocked that he let that one go.
Although there's actually no second white mana is going to stop that. So instead it's going to be Bring to Light for 4 here.
Okay.
So we'll see what's the most impactful option on 4 mana. And that's, I guess, even if Sam lets it resolve.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty tough. I don't really know what he would go grab here. I'm just kind of thinking he could go get Unmoored Ego to snag the Part the Waterveil would be maybe something he wanted to do. I guess I don't really know what he would be setting up for there.
Maybe some potential for Hostage Taker Steal Your Fae of Wishes.
Sure. All right. So, I mean, Sam able to kill him this turn? In over 2 turns? He's close. He can't kill him this turn. He is very close, though, with that Part the Waterveil.
Yeah, and does Sam have another Sylvan Advocate in his hand? Because if he does, that might actually change the math. Because it's...
There's Part the Waterveil in
going
that
for
forest.
It. So we have 7 damage this turn, and then an Advocate next turn would make it 9. And that actually lines up exactly perfectly. So, yeah, I guess the question is, at this point, does Sam have it?
Yeah. All right, so he's going to attack Grant from 16 here. All right. He has Evolving Wilds and a Wayward Swordtooth, it looks like.
So not quite, but with the Teferi on the battlefield, Sam's going to be able to attack Grant low enough that at any point a Brazen Bar connecting is going to be the game. And here we see actually another bar picked up, which is going to make it that much more difficult for Grant to kind of fend these off with, one-for-one interaction.
Okay. Well, did you just have Advocate and we missed it? No, he's going to draw towards it. Okay. So Sam going to draw off the clue. And he hit it. Oh, he hit it. All right. Well.
Tosses it into Grant's library, and that's going to be the end of our Pioneer match. Sam, honestly, in an excellent spot, kind of from start to finish in this match, it seems.
All right. Well, yeah, good for Sam digging for that Advocate to kill him, because Grant had a Supreme Verdict in hand. He had a lot of stuff going on. I mean, he might have been able to claw back. You mentioned that the Brazen Bars were going to be a little bit difficult to deal with, but, I mean, he had Verdict. He had Deafening Clarion. He had ways to get back in the game. So, good on Sam, drawing towards his outs and gets there in a couple turns.
Yeah, so, beating the 3 Teferi is super impressive, and kind of the mana of the Nimizit deck showing itself to be functional not far from fantastic, though. That
Yeah.
that Supreme Verdict being trapped in hand really kind of forced Grant down some awkward paths.
Yeah, definitely. So Sam going to even it up at a match apiece here. So Grant took the W in Legacy. Sam comes back and wins in Pioneer. So we're going to bring you Modern matchup next, which is going to be kind of like two pillars of the format, I would say. There's Grant's Grixis Death Shadow deck versus Sam playing that the Simic Urza deck now with its Archmage's Charms. So we'll be back in a few minutes and we'll bring you our third and final match here in our finals, and we're going to crown a champion.